Hello there, this is Alina and my channel Enough. Today I'm continuing the series of videos USSR, Evil Empire is Back. This video is number 2 and it's about propaganda. It's a propaganda of USSR. Why do we need to know about that? Because modern day Russia using a lot of, and some other countries, using a lot of old tools of USSR propaganda, and that is why it's important. In the previous video I told you about the organizations of young communists from childhood, from little October children, Octobrists, to pioneers from about 9 to 14 years old, and then Komsomol, Young Communist League, which children or young people from 14 to 28 years old could have been, and I was. And after that, many of them became members of Communist Party of USSR. What should you know about Russian and Soviet propaganda? First of all, you may be surprised to know that in USSR there were special people. They were called propagandists. These people were taught in universities to be propagandists, to spew propaganda of Communist Party and USSR to the other people. This is important to know. They were professionals. They were graduated from universities. They were graduated from high school of KGB or high school of Communist Party. There is a special university for that. And so they were very skilled and trained to manipulate people, because the propaganda is basically a manipulation. It's a manipulation of people, and you need propaganda when, especially when the situation in the country is not good. And why I'm saying that the Soviet propagandists were highly skilled, it's because they could make believe to millions of Soviet people that they live in the greatest country in the world, that they have freedom, which they never did. Then they build in communism, which they never had. Despite what you might believe, Soviet Union never had communism, never had socialism, which was a stage before communism. It was always a totalitarian regime, basically a dictatorship. And not even a dictatorship of one party, it most of the time was dictatorship of one leader. And for that they used a whole bunch of propagandist tools. If you look at the, even in internet, if you just Google propaganda and propaganda tools, you will most likely see the website I'll show you just now. Just it will take a minute. If you Google propaganda and you find propaganda techniques even on Wikipedia in English, you could see a lot of them. For instance, specific techniques, basically I counted about 70, and I could say practically all of them used by USSR and Russia. Especially the technique I'm gonna tell you about today a little bit longer. You see how many of them? It is in the very end, and it's called whataboutism. So let's dive in. As you can see, I counted about 70 of different tools, propaganda tools, and I bet USSR used all of them very much. And even Hitler's propagandist Goebbels was studying USSR propaganda as well and used it himself. Even in Nazi Germany was first time used term fake news, and trying to undermine the media, or that's why democratic countries they surviving and they have democratic institutions, and one of them is media, independent media. Yeah, they criticizing sometimes the leader of the country, they going after the corrupted politicians or somebody who doing something wrong. This is very important to have a free press. USSR never had it, neither did Russia. Even in Gorbachev times, it still were things in place to watch over people and the media. Even there were few so semi-independent and mostly independent, like Echo of Moscow or something like that, or Rain, but they all were closely watched, and KGB included, they was closely watching them and so on. So it's just it never was free press, and USSR brainwashed people from childhood, as I told you, not just about political information classes. It just was everywhere. All the media controlled by the government, and they telling what the government allowed them to tell. All the textbooks written by the government, and they saying and presenting you the version of history government allow you to know. Yeah, we heard in my time about crimes of Stalin, but it was very briefly. And yeah, people knew about that, but only when I read Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which was roughly in university, or maybe even later. Because in school, we didn't know about that. We heard about that book, and we were forced to condemn it, but neither us nor our teachers ever hold it in the hands, or read, because it was forbidden. When I read that book, I was shocked about what kind of evil empire USSR was. I was shocked about what atrocities was committed by Soviet government against its own people, about children. The children of people who disagree, or even not even disagree with Soviet regime. They might have told one joke about Stalin, they ended up in Gulag and become enemy of the people. And this part, Putin bringing back. He twisting history and teaching people that history must be positive. Think about it, how history could be positive or negative. History is history, it's facts. Every country has dark sides of history, but free countries like Canada, like United States, bringing it up, discussing it, teaching people that this was bad, we shouldn't do it again. It was awful. USSR and Russia never did. They always right, everything they do is great. There was no problems. Yeah, Stalin was bad, but that was just him and few of his criminal comrades. But in general, USSR is right, and even people who were murdered in those gulags, and it's like prisoners' camps. Some of them dying with the name of Stalin. They were saying glory to Stalin. It's not him doing it, it's someone else doing it. They was truly believe that party will find out that they're innocent and they will bring them back from the jail and telling that they were good people. That wasn't true. It didn't happen. I didn't live in Stalin time, so I will talk more about my own experience. And my experience was that even I lived in free Siberia with free-thinking teachers, amazing teachers, I cannot complain about that, but they were part of the system. They was have to teach what they had to teach. Even they tried and they make us more free-thinking people than majority, but they still couldn't, and they themselves didn't know about USSR as much as I do now, because I live in a free country and I have access to all kind of information. They didn't, and I don't blame them, because they tried to do as best as they could, but they just simply didn't have that kind of information. Let's talk about Soviet propaganda. One of the most common tools used by Soviet propagandists was whataboutism. It's the very last one in this list on the page I just showed you. Basically, what it says here in Wikipedia is whataboutism is a variant of the attempts to discredit an opponent's position by charging them with hypocrisy without directly refuting or disproving their argument, which particularly associated with Soviet and Russian propaganda. exactly. It's kind of like when you're discussing something and they trying to divert you by accusing you of something or your country. Like saying, one of the common example was when a foreign journalist asking Soviet person about what kind of salary a Russian engineer has. They asking it because they know Soviet engineers was receiving very little money. Probably children in Tim Hortons, or, well, there was no probably Tim Hortons at the time, making more money now than Soviet engineer with 5 years study in university and whole bunch of work experience making. So Soviet people say, oh, they killing black people in America. Or when you're talking about right now about the war in Ukraine, they say, what about United States? What about the war in Vietnam? What about anything else? What about talking about Canada? What about the First Nation people when they were, some were killed or something? A normal person from, as I said, I explain you what normal person is. Typical Canadian would say, oh, yeah, that was bad. So they switch the subject completely, they make you look guilty, and they completely diverted you from atrocities what Russian army doing in Ukraine. And stuff like that. So they basically trying to say everybody's bad. No, it's not. Every country has dark sides in their history, but not many has as dark side as, say, Nazi Germany. Or modern day Russia, unfortunately. Putin made out of my country fascist state, pariah state of the whole world. This is what happens. But propaganda in Russia, they just basically right now squashed all in the independent media. They squashed Facebook, Twitter, everything. They're trying to get rid of YouTube just now. So hopefully some Russians, which I will make video in Russian, will still see my video. What about other propagandist techniques? Another one is direct attack. It's used a lot. And it might call a little bit different than this list I was just mentioned. It's kind of like in USSR was popular to make a Saturday working day for free. And the money was supposed to go somewhere, most likely to the pockets of the Communist Party leaders, but everybody was believed it going to help people who starving in Africa, something. So somebody couldn't attend it because they had sick children and there was nobody to look after them. So what's the Communist Party leader will tell to them? He would say, oh, you saying your children was sick and was nobody to look after them. Do you know that people and children in Africa are starving? It make you look guilty, it make you look what a bad guy you are. You didn't come to work for free whole Saturday to help the children who starving in Africa. And your sick children you should have dumped somewhere, I don't know where. Stuff like that. And they not afraid to use it. And there is a whole Russian propaganda playbook. There is an article by Mark Galeotti, very interesting scientist, London-based as far as I know. Writer, scientist, used to be a professor in New York University and a few others. I will provide the link to the information about him and to the article I'm talking about in the description to this video. Now I'm gonna quote this article as an example, some of that article as an example of how the propaganda works. This is the article called An Expert's Guide to Putin's Propaganda Playbook by Mark Galeotti from September 28, 2016. It was published by CNN, and the example was done, this is example on, if you remember the story about Malaysia Airline Flight 17, shot over the eastern Ukraine in July 2014. That's what CNN says about that. There was a report done, there was Dutch prosecutors, and they delivered the report about, after the investigation, what happened to the flight and what actually happened. CNN, I'm quoting, "The report's findings were clear. A Russian missile supplied by the Russian military and fired from the territory held by Russians' local proxies down the plain, killing all 298 people aboard. In response, going from Vladimir Putin's playbook, they basically provide a whole bunch of alternative theories, tons of it. Some of it was bizarre, some was sound more or less plausible, but it was so many different theories, like bucket full of it. Some of it was basically that Ukrainian jet knocked down the plane, even though their aircraft couldn't have fired the missile on that altitude, or they said it was mistakenly taken as a Putin's plane, and that another theory was that the plane was already full of dead bodies. It was just a provocation. Russian propaganda and Soviet propaganda love the word provocation. I live in Canada for 18 years, never heard it. Because normal people don't kill a bunch of their neighbors just to say it's a provocation. This is country such and such did. Look how bad they are. They killed my neighbors. Normal people don't do that. So, and again, was a big investigation done by Bellingcat, the citizen journalist group at the time. And even back then, they proved everything beyond reasonable doubt. Yet Russians were accusing them about Russophobic propaganda, and some think tanks and some pro-Russian media was throwing a whole bunch of different theories. Galeotti says that basically he researched that too and said none of those was standing up the point. The aim is to pander to those naturally skeptical of so-called mainstream media and to generate enough confusion and uncertainty that people begin to despair of ever really knowing the truth. So that's one of the goals of Russian and Soviet propaganda, is to create a doubt, to create the feeling of uncertainty that nobody knows the truth. Yes, they do. There is truth, there are facts, and people know them. Well, the goal of Russian propaganda, make you to distrust your government, making to believe that the butcher of Ukraine, Russian dictator Putin, telling you the truth. And in 2014, I ran into a few people in Canada, mostly one, who was actually Canadian, not the Russians. Some Russians live here, and they were so brainwashed that they live here in the free countries for 20, 30 years, and they still believe Putin's propaganda. But this guy was Canadian, and he was also thinking, oh, Putin tell him the truth. I was trying to explain him, I hope he understood, I sent him information, go verify it for yourself. Here's the information, that's where to find it, go ahead. So, my point and the point of this video, to explain you how Russian propaganda works, so you see the difference, you see why and how it's done, so you don't allow that to be done to you. Because some foreign leaders using the Russian propaganda playbook as well, to lie to you. And it shouldn't be done. And we shouldn't believe Putin's propaganda because it's all a lie. About war in Ukraine, I'll make a different video, and basically you know all the proofs I have about that, and I was watching it since 2014, but I'm not gonna do it in this video. So, what kind of tactics Putin's propaganda playbook, according to Galeotti, using? There is a 5-step plan, and as Galeotti says, this is after all the playbook we've seen the Kremlin adopt in crisis after crisis, from the occupation of Crimea to the Olympic doping scandal. And those 5 steps are: deny, counterattack, confuse, equate, repeat. First, flatly deny everything regardless of how conclusive the evidence looks. Those soldiers taking over Crimea aren't Russians, for they spot the latest Russian kid. And even Putin, that's my addition to what he says, later admitted, yes, they were our people, our troops. And he said, so what? But before, oh boy, how he denied it. The next step is counterattack. What does it mean? Question others' motives, evidence, and interpretation. Proclaim that is an anti-Russian smear, a provocation. If nothing else, this goes down well at home. So, That's what was done many times. Next step, try to confuse the issue as much as possible. Throw out as many rival theories and explanations as possible, however ludicrous. And that's Russians did too, a lot. Only example of that plane, I just mentioned you few theories. It was, I don't know, 20, 30 different theories. And the goal is just to confuse people so they think, well, nobody knows the truth. Fourth, as a fallback, claim that even if the allegations are true, though of course they're not, everyone else does it too, especially the Americans. Everyone's athletes dope, but only Russians are victimized, something like that. And finally, keep on doing this. It's a firm conviction of the Kremlin, says Galeotti, not without some justice, that the West is an attention deficit disorder society that can be outraged by something today, yet forgot it tomorrow, when some new crisis or scandal catches its attention. That's exactly what Putin hopes right now in Ukraine. He hopes that the Western countries will forget about it soon because they're too tired. For 90 days they're hearing war, people dying, buildings getting blown up. That's again one of the propagandist tactics. You can see it in Wikipedia as well. The more you're talking about it, the more they're trying to make people get used to the death. Get used to, oh, this bunch of people get blown up, this happened. They stop feeling it as much. One person died is already not good enough, not huge enough to be outraged. It needs hundreds, thousands, millions. It's also a propagandist tactic. So, another tactics, I just described you a few. So how to go about it? What else? Sorry, I forgot to mention you also that what kind of else using Putin is army of trolls, something like about 9,000 of them. I'm not talking about mystical creatures. I'm talking about internet trolls. And in some countries there are internet trolls, but they are individuals. In Russia, they are paid by Russian government. This is new addition to Soviet propaganda. And how do I know that? There was a iron proof, basically. One of the journalists joined the troll factory and wrote about it and get to court to sue them. And there was decision of the court of St. Petersburg who awarded her in the end, so she won the court case, and that case, by its existence, proving beyond reasonable or any doubt that there are trolls paid by Russian government who writing in internet comments to a whole bunch of places and so on. My family ran into it in about 2004, 5, 8, somewhere then. My husband Canadian, and he was on some forums, and he ran into the one person for sure, maybe it was a few, who pretended to be American, saying they live in Seattle or something like that. We traveled in Seattle, we've been there, and my husband's originally Canadian, so he speaks very good English. So, and we both find out that the person who was writing never been in Seattle, and let alone live there, and his English was Russian English. It wasn't English of the person who lived there for 19 years or something, he claimed to be. And only later people started to find out about Russian trolls, which the world didn't know about them at the time. Many countries in the world didn't even know about propaganda and information war, which Russia was fighting, and Soviet Union and Russia was fighting with them since always. Especially after Cold War, after Soviet Union lost the Cold War, and especially after 2014, after the war in Ukraine, and they basically were fighting information war with us, with Canada, with Western countries, and the big Russian propaganda tool was Russia Today. That channel and that company, media. I came to Canada and we could watch Russia Today in Canada until basically February of this year, when the war continued in Ukraine and escalating, because it didn't start on February 24th. It started in 2014. Russia attacked Ukraine then. And the war was continuing and continuing. It just wasn't all that big as now. So Russia today, like I was researching about 2013, 2014, was spewing its propaganda for 644 million people in the world at the time. About 85 million in America and United States alone. So if at the beginning, when I just came to Canada, they were mostly news, but very quickly by 2008 for sure, they completely switched to be total propaganda. And please don't be confused when Russia trying to accuse the Western countries about you talking about the freedom of speech and you closed Russia today. Freedom of speech and journalism and the propaganda of the foreign state in your country, which the goal of that propaganda is destroy your country and your state, is a different things. Russia today was not a journalism, it was a propaganda. Period. So was Sputnik, and so a whole bunch of other think tanks, even one run by Canadian professor Michael Shasudovsky, something like that. Global conference, something global international. And there are lots of them in existence. There are also, beside internet trolls, there are internet bots, which not even people, it's just the bots, who creating groups in internet, like on Facebook and something like that, or sites saying something about, I don't know, gardening, or mothers against children's trafficking, something like that. And some real people started to join the groups because they thinking it's a good cause, and it turned out to be complete propaganda places. And sometimes even, as you know, the Russian trolls were interfering with elections in some countries, in the States and Canada. Sometimes they creating tensions between different parts of society, in states for instance. They could create a group A and group B. And basically the same troll sitting in Russia, typing on the keyboard, and throwing logs in the fire on both sides, and saying, oh, people from group B said bad stuff about group A. And then people from group A said bad stuff about group B. And he keep pushing people in both groups, basically meet in real life and beat each other up, or having a fight, or a lot of tension in some other countries created by those trolls who doing that type of stuff on Facebook and some other places. So how to go about it? First of all, please verify information where it's coming from. If there is any connection to Russian government, even if you just read in Wikipedia about what kind of newspaper or media that information came from, who is behind it, who is the board of directors, there is any information what kind of media it is. If there isn't, just throw it in the garbage. Most likely it's a Russian or somebody else's troll. If you find out that there is a media, and sometimes useful to dig a bit deeper, like I did with some election things for Canada, it actually was a real internet company, which was a branch of some respectful media. So one would think it should be a valid information. Turned out to be when I looked at the people who run in that particular media in internet, I found out it's a bunch of young people who talking about politics, yet they don't have any knowledge about that. And the main editor who wrote the article saying, I like to play football and I like to be paid for it, that's why I went to journalism. And basically he accusing one of Canadian politicians of something, basing his story on opinion of some Canadian politician who based his opinion on somebody else's opinion. So nobody talked to real politician, they just publishing opinion based on opinion based on opinion, and pretending it's a news. That is one of the big problems nowadays, that some news posting opinion and pretend it's a news. It's not. Please remember that none of the social networks, not Facebook, not Twitter, not anything, it's not news. There is no editor there is nobody responsible, it's just somebody's opinion. Please find out what's that opinion based upon. What kind of information? Who is behind it? And even if your friend, a respectful person, retweeted something or reposted something, please verify information for yourself. Your friend may be a great person, but they might just click share without even learning what it is. And sometimes it seems like it's a good thing, but when you started to reading it, it turned out to be it's not. Also, make sure this is not biased. The information, what you're reading, isn't biased. You can judge it by the language. If there is photos and videos, there are ways to verify it, like even search Google Photos, and sometimes some photo made 10 years ago using now as a proof of something happening somewhere. During the first war in Ukraine in 2014, Ukrainians did they created a site called stopfake.org, when they actually proving and disproving Russian propaganda, when the Russians taking a video or picture of something and pretend it happening in Ukraine. One of the examples was the picture of fire in Canadian city, if I pronounce it correctly, it's a French name and I don't speak French, Lac Megantic. And they saying this is the burning city in Ukraine, which Nazis burning in Ukraine. It's Canada, it's not Ukraine. And now there was the fire on the fields of Volgograd region where I'm from originally. And they say, oh look, Ukrainian government burning the field in Ukraine because they want to starve people. I find that image and find that article. The fire was happening in different time and it was in different place. It was in Russia, in the Volgograd region. And stuff like that. So, in the end of this video, I put also in I could put a couple links also in the description of this video from Bellingcat, which will explain you also how to verify information on social networks. If you're talking to Russian trolls or even Russian relatives or somebody, the useful thing to ask them questions, something like where Putin lives. And no, he's not living in the Kremlin. Every person in Canada in 2 minutes in internet, it depends how you're familiar with the computer, you can find out where living Canadian Prime Minister. Everybody knows where the residence of the President of the United States. Nobody knows where lives Putin. And stuff like that. So make them prove you the information they brought to you. Not the other way around. Because they will throw you information in the garbage. They're not gonna read it. You will waste your time to research, as I did for years. Russians bring me another propaganda piece and I'm researching it and find out and proving them that this is not happening. It's not true. Like now they denying the atrocities in Bucha. They're saying it's Ukrainians did. Bellingcat has very good thorough investigation and they proved beyond any doubt who did it. That was done by Russian army. I'm sorry to say that. Russia is one of my countries and I feel bad about it. But this is the truth how it is. I have no reason to lie to you, but yet verify every information I'm giving to you as well. We need to stand up together to make sure that Russian propaganda is not coming to our countries. We should make sure that we're not supporting it, we're not spreading it out, and we stand up against it. Because otherwise, we might end up in a dictatorship state, kind of like Russia, where people believe the war either didn't happen, or they bombing only military bases, or they're not doing that horrible things they're doing, and so on. They believe, some of them believe, not all of them, no. Many Russians don't believe in it. And then it's another propaganda. They're saying that so many people supporting Putin. It's not true either. And one of the famous Russian politologist Ekaterina Shulman, for instance, was explaining very well, mostly in Russian, unfortunately, that how the statistics works there and so on. First of all, there is no true statistics. Second of all, many people who they trying to question for the polls and stuff like that, refusing to even talk to the people who doing those research. So maybe out of all Russians, about, I forgot, 2% or 3% agree even answer the questions. So all those 80% or whatever supporting Putin, it's from those 3% who said, okay, I'm gonna answer your questions. When people from statistic bureaus calling them on the phone at home, what do you expect Russians to say when they're saying, do you support Putin or you want to go to jail for 15 years? So people in Russia going to jail for 15 years right now for not supporting Putin. Some people getting arrested just because they came on the streets. Even some standing with just empty piece of paper, nothing even say that I am against war, it's just empty. They still get arrested. One woman was standing at the main Russian church in Moscow with the sign saying do not kill, one of the 10 commandments. She got arrested too. Somebody for couple tweets get arrested. So Soviet statistics was a big lie, and Russian statistics is the big lie as well. There is one of the company who do more or less independent research, but that's about it. So, and there is no free media in Russia, and there is no foreign media in Russia, they not allow it. So when it sounds so hypocritical to me when they say, oh, you closed Russia today. Well, you closed any foreign media before, period. There is nothing there. A long ago, before even this February of this year. Yet, they trying to blame other countries and make them look guilty. Oh boy, you closed our propaganda tool in your country, how dare you? So this is I wanted you to know. If you have any questions, you can write me a comment or contact me on my YouTube channel. And thank you very much for your attention. Enough of propaganda, and have a good day. This is my opinion, and you have your own.